Hello everybody, my name is Jaime Omar Castellanos Sesma, and today I'm going to tell my horror legend. The name of the story is The Legend of the Taxi Driver from San Cristobal de las Casas. Characters and description is a taxi driver and a woman who board the taxi to visit well-known places in San Cristobal. This legend has it at the entrance to the municipal pantheon of San Cristobal de las Casas. A woman with an attractive face appears, dating from about 25 or 30 years ago. This was a surprising case in which they say it cost the life of a taxi driver whom we call Pedro because his relatives asked not to mention his real name. Any given day, for a driver and owner of a rental car, a closed car, or a tourism, as they used to be called, taxis, they say that that day, very early in the morning, they approached Pedro, that he was cleaning his unit. Two ladies with individual bouquets of flowers, and they asked him to take them to the local cemetery. The woman got into the car and the quick trip of no more than 5 minutes was made. It's believed that around 7 in the morning and almost to head back to the city, Pedro was startled when a voice in the back of the car ordered him to take her to the center of the city. Intrigued by the way the woman had gotten into the car while he was driving through the San Cristobal base, he never stopped seeing in the rear view mirror that woman who covers her white face behind a black veil. Upon reaching the height of the temple of Nuestra Señora de la Merced, the woman orders the taxi driver to stop and tells him to wait for her. He gets out of the car and Pedro notices the woman's well-outlined body that is drawn in a fifth black dress. She's tall, white, and you can see behind the veil that covers her face her beautiful features. The woman spends a while inside the temple and then, instead of getting into the car, signals to the taxi driver to continue waiting for her, and she goes to the temple of Calvary. A while later, the woman returns and gets back into the car, orders to go to the Guadalupe neighborhood and does the same. Get out of the car and enter the temple to leave a while later and order that he take her to another neighborhood to visit another temple. Thus, the hour pass and the day is dying. Finally, since they have visited all the temples of San Cristobal de las Casas, that woman with a tired voice orders the taxi driver to take her to the temple of San Felipe. It's almost night. The dim lights of some electric lamps come on. When the woman leaves the San Felipe temple and orders the taxi driver to take her back to the city cemetery. There, the woman, before entering the pantheon, turns to the taxi driver and asks him to please collect what he owes the next morning at her home. The veil that covers her face is lifted, and the taxi driver can see in all its fullness the beautiful face of the woman, somewhat pale and haggard, and hands her a written piece of paper. The beautiful woman, without expecting anything, disappears at the entrance of the cemetery, and the somewhat angry taxi driver leaves the place. Pedro, tired from a day driving almost non-stop, goes home to rest. The next day, early, they appear and at the address given by the rare woman, which is in the neighborhood of Mexicanos, knock on the door and ask to speak to the owner of the house. The owner leaves, and the taxi driver explains that a woman used his vehicle and that she left a paper with that address to collect. First, Pedro receives a loud laugh from that man in response, and then he himself asks him more carefully about the details of the survey, and the face of the owner of that house he turns from lauded to a more serious state. Then he invites the taxi driver to come to the house and asks him if he's able to recognize the woman who was with him the day before. The owner of that house takes out a large painting and shows Pedro a photograph of a beautiful young woman. Pedro, the taxi driver, recognizes her immediately. It's her, there's no doubt. But the owner of the house says that this is impossible. That what the taxi driver says can't be. That this woman can't have been transported in the taxi because she has been dead for more than 10 years. Upon receiving that reply, Pedro faints. The owners of the house call other taxi drivers to help him. He's taken home. Pedro regains consciousness and is able to give a detailed account of what has happened, but he's unable to get out of bed. That day, he begins to have a high fever. It's said that there were 8 days of fever until finally he died. His death is attributed to this strange event. The popular voice says that even today, on spring mornings and cold winter nights, a beautiful white woman dressed in black suddenly appears in the area of the Pantheon and asks to be taken to visit the churches of San Cristobal. And my personal reflection is, it is that, well, if it's a mystery, if it's a creepy legend that freezes the blood and makes us believe in the supernatural, in the terrible, enigmatic, which is the afterlife, but not everything stops there. It's said that even today, 2 or 3 people, and not exactly taxi drivers, have been approached by a beautiful woman who dresses in black and who leaves the Pantheon, although apparently they have not had such bad luck as happened to the taxi driver. And that's it. That was all my horror legend. I hope you are enjoying it. Thanks and see you soon.